La Petite Nation to lead us in the national anthem.
Président. Au Canada, terre de nos aïeux, ton car ton bras sait porter l'épée, il sait porter la croix, ton histoire est une God keep our land glorious and free.
Let the doors be open, que l'on ouvre les portes. Déclaration de députés, statements from members. The honourable member from Whitby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to share some exciting news. Last week, our government announced $3.1 billion in additional funding from the federal government to the province of Ontario to strengthen our healthcare system. This is in addition to the $77 billion that will be transferred to the province as part of the Canada Health Transfer. The bilateral agreement is a testament to the cooperation of federal and provincial leadership in Ontario. This is a moment of celebration for our community as the agreement signifies a concrete commitment to advancing healthcare infrastructure, reducing wait times, ensuring access to family health teams, and modernizing health records. This is also a significant step forward in our pursuit for a Whitby hospital, a project close to the hearts of all residents in our town. Specifically, it gives Ontario the means to accelerate essential projects, notably the construction of a long-awaited hospital in Whitby. Our community has spoken, and we're looking forward to the province getting moving.
The honourable member from Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, happy Valentine's Day.
Yay!
Speaking of matters from the heart, every year there are more than 260,000 Canadian babies who are born with congenital heart defect, the #1 birth defect in Canada. And this week is Congenital Heart Disease Awareness Week. My wife and I have a personal connection. 8 years ago, we lost our son, only 22 minutes after birth, Teddy, to congenital heart defect. Most families have a similar story. Congenital heart defects occur in every 1 of 100 babies born in Canada. But many families have stories that last a lifetime thanks to work of doctors and the Canadian Congenital Heart Alliance celebrating its 20th year this year. 60 years ago, only about 20% of children survived adulthood. That number has since increased to over 90%. These children who are born to CHD are some of the strongest kids. They are heart warriors and may endure multiple surgeries after birth and throughout their life. This Valentine's Day, have a heart. Share your stories of congenital heart disease, and let's find a cure so Canadians can bring their babies home with a broken heart.
The honourable member from Dartmouth Cole Harbour.
Mr. Speaker, I'm rising to recognize and honour my good friend and former parliamentarian from Dartmouth Cole Harbour, the 3-term Mayor of Halifax, Mike Savage. Mike is known as a leader who can work with any order of government, no matter the political stripe, to get things done. Back when I served with him as a municipal councillor and as deputy mayor, I appreciated how open and accessible he was. Whether as the chair of FCM's Big City Mayors or as co-chair of FCM's 2015 Syrian Refugee Resettlement Task Force, his strong sense of civic duty and drive to foster greater economic and social inclusion for everyone guide his path. Mike is someone who deeply cares about people, and regardless of the challenge, the issue, or even the jurisdiction, he works hard advocating for folks across the municipality. After more than a decade as our mayor, Mike won't be seeking re-election. It's no secret that under his leadership, our city has experienced record growth, and our next mayor has big shoes to fill. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Mayor Mike Savage and his entire team for their years of service and dedication to our municipality.
Here, here. L'honorable
The honourable member for La Prairie. On February 24th, it'll be a special day for members of my riding. Ms. Lefort will celebrate her 100th birthday. She gave birth to 5 beautiful children, and she was involved in many organizations, including the Seniors Association and the Canadian Cancer Associations. All of this in addition to managing her family company. Ms. Lefleur acted very graciously, and happy 100th birthday to you. Thank you. The honourable member for Alfred Pellant. Mr. Speaker, today I would like to draw attention to the problems of civil aviation safety across the Taiwan Strait. Since January 30th, China's Civil Aviation Administration has been in clear violation of ICAO regulations. China's unilateral changes to air routes and its revocation of the 2015 Cross-Strait Agreement without consulting Taiwan seriously compromises aviation safety, peace, and stability in the region and undermines the status quo in the Taiwan Strait. The Taiwan Strait is an indispensable axis of world trade, and any disruption would have major repercussions worldwide. Today, more than ever, it is important to uphold global cohesion, the rule of law, and respect for bilateral treaties. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
honourable member from Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal NDP government, Canadians know that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. In this era of insane inflation, housing crisis, and food prices through the roof, this Prime Minister is hiking the carbon tax again on April 1st. They want to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. Canadians are crying out for relief, but this government instead wants to keep digging deeper into our pockets to fund their corrupt overspending. The carbon tax makes food more expensive at every stage. When you tax the farmer who grows the food and the trucker that transports the food, you tax the people who buy the food. The carbon tax does nothing to reduce emissions, but forces Canadians into poverty and homelessness. The end result of the Liberals' failed carbon tax experiment are the 2 million Canadians who are now using food banks. This is unacceptable. Conservatives will continue to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.
The honourable member from Labrador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to stand in the House of Commons today and show my love for the Arctic and our love for Canada's sovereignty and security. I want to talk about the generational NORAD investments of nearly $40 billion over 20 years that we're investing into the safety and security of the Canadian Armed Forces for all Canadians. Mr. Speaker, under NORAD, we have designated 3 sites of forwarding operations in Inuvik, Yellowknife, and Iqaluit, and 1 operating deployment air base in Happy Valley Goose Bay. These 4 sites are critical to NORAD's operations in the Arctic and to Canada's sovereignty. We're investing to build 6 new Navy ships, 4 of which we've delivered, 88 new aircraft, and nearly $7 billion to modernize our surveillance system by installing over-the-horizon radar systems. Unlike the Conservatives who cut the budget in national defence and Canada's security system, we are increasing our budget and we are spending the money that we need.
The honourable member from Eglinton Lawrence.
Mr. Speaker, in 1913, Jews were prohibited from practicing medicine in any hospital in Toronto. But 4 brave immigrant women from the Jewish community worked tirelessly and raised enough support to open the doors to an institution that is known today as Mount Sinai Hospital, a world leader in the delivery of health care in over 45 languages. Ironically, this sacred ground of healing was the target of an anti-Semitic protest that undermined the health and safety of the patients and medical professionals who work there. The hatred must come to an end. The attacks against synagogues, schools, businesses, and neighborhoods must stop. But the burden shouldn't fall only to the Jewish community. We must all put our shoulder to the wheel. Strong allies like Labour leader Victoria Mancinelli speak with moral clarity and set an example for others. For only if we stand together can we end anti-Semitism and live up to the vision of Mount Sinai that still motivates an inclusive and life-saving work that they do today. Thank you.
The honourable member from Calgary Heritage.
After 8 years, these NDP Liberals are not worth the cost. And guess what? The Alberta NDP agree. NDP leadership contenders are abandoning the sinking carbon tax ship.
That's right.
Sarah Hoffman said they played dirty politics with it and picked winners and losers. You know who else loses? All Canadians. 23%. That's the whopping increase to their carbon tax on April 1st. 2 million Canadians lined up at food banks across the nation. The family of 4 paying $700 more in groceries this year. This Prime Minister is so radical that even his costly coalition partners in Alberta's NDP can't defend his carbon tax. So let me be clear to NDP Liberals in filleting each other and the costs on everything. Axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime, and restore the promise.
Yeah!
The honourable member from Humber River Black Creek.
Mr. Speaker, February is Age-Related Macular Degeneration Month, and yesterday was AMD Awareness Day on the Hill. A number of stakeholders and specialists in eye care are here in Ottawa this week to meet with members of this House and the other place to speak to vision care issues. We salute them and their work that they do on behalf of all of us. I also take this opportunity to thank all of my colleagues in this House for adopting unanimously my Bill C-284 to establish a national eye care strategy in Canada. I ask my colleagues in the Senate to please pass the bill as soon as possible. It would be wonderful to celebrate the adoption of an eye care strategy during February AMD Awareness Month. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
The honourable member from Carlton Trail Eagle Creek.
The Auditor General lifted the veil on this government's corrupt Arrive scam, revealing that the cost of this useless app, which should have been $80,000, is $60 million and counting. The two-person company, GC Strategies, that did no IT work, was paid over $19 million for Arrive scam, charging over $1,000 a day, 60% more than a government IT employee. And with insider access, they dictated the requirements for a contract they won. Today, media is reporting they've received over $250 million from this Liberal government since 2015. Whiskey tasting and extravagant dinners with government officials went unreported. Documents went missing, and taxpayers footed the bill. The Prime Minister's failed Arrive scam app, which wrongly sent thousands of Canadians into quarantine, was over budget and not worth the cost. The RCMP must expand its investigation to figure out where the money is and how to get it back.
The honourable member from South Surrey White Rock.
As Asian Canadians welcomed the Year of the Dragon, Richmond residents gathered to protest taxpayer-funded drug use in their community. A video from the protest has gone viral and international. As citizens dared to speak up, they were shouted down by a vile left-wing racist screaming, "Go back to Hong Kong and go back home where you came from." These comments are outrageous and have no place in our country. It's shameful that this Prime Minister has allowed racism to fester among his political base. People from all over the world used to dream of a day when they could bring their families to Canada, afford a home in a safe community, and be part of the Canadian story. We have been blessed by the contributions of Asian immigrants for generations. After 8 years of this Prime Minister's radical drug policies, our streets are filled with crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. Conservatives stand with all Canadians who want to raise their children in a drug-free community and will always defend their right to say so.
The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Mr. Speaker, with winter, cold and snow, it's hard to imagine better days ahead. But rest assured, spring is on its way, and with it, the delicious symbol of warmth that is Quebec-made maple syrup. Yes, Mr. Speaker, it's once again time for families, friends, and visitors to take part in the maple harvest, a ritual as sweet as the syrup it celebrates. It's a celebration of Quebec gastronomy, where traditional dishes mingle with the taste of fresh maple syrup, a harvest that dates back to the Indigenous peoples and is part of Quebec's rich heritage and culture.
Pancakes, your crepes, or pretty much anything your heart fancies in fresh maple syrup at home or visiting our local cabana sucks, I invite all Vaudois-Soulangeois to enjoy the delicious gift of spring that the maple harvest brings. Merci.
The honourable member from Vancouver East.
On every Valentine's Day since 1992, led by Indigenous matriarchs, 2S LGBTQ+, and family members in the downtown East Side, the community took to the streets to honour and grieve for the loss of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and the gender diverse. Each year, as we march, the drumming unite our heartbeat, eagles circle in the sky. Their spirit live within us. This act of remembrance is an expression of love, respect, and solidarity for families and survivors. Our community stand united in the call for justice. We demand full implementation of all 231 calls for justice. We demand action and not just empty words. We demand accountability and measurable progress. CBC reported that as of June 2023, only 2 of the 231 calls for justice have been completed, and more than half have not even been started. This is unconscionable. In honor of Indigenous...
The Honourable Member for Mirabel. On January 27th, at the St. Scholastique Church, over 200 people paid their last respects to Ms. Louise Léonard, who passed away at the age of 79. She was the wife of my friend Denis Lauzon, founder of Mirabel's Agricultural Centre. Denis had a very special way of introducing himself to people. For nearly 60 years, he was the self-proclaimed best married man in St. Scholastique, and with good reason. He and Louise had a touching complicity, and I was welcomed like a son in their home. As a teacher, Louise Léonard contributed to the development of hundreds of young people who crossed her path. She was proud and involved in her community and the world. Like many village elders, Louise longed to grow old at her husband's side at the new seniors' residence in St. Scholastique, peacefully with her loved ones. And as you stroll down the hill today, you may come across Denis, and if you look up to the sky, you'll see Louise, her eyes full of kindness, watching over him and all of us, as she always has. Bon voyage, Louise.
Member from Calgary Midnapore.
After 8 years of this Liberal NDP government, the RCMP is once again investigating a Liberal deal. 2 of the contractors involved in the creation of the Arrive Can app are already being investigated for potentially criminal acts used to obtain contracts. But that investigation won't even scratch the surface of everything that was hidden from Canadians. GC Strategies, an IT firm of 2 people that did no actual IT work, was paid over $19 million just to find people to build this $60 million app. Not to mention, they also rigged the bidding process for a $25 million contract that only they could win. And it doesn't stop there. Reports are out this morning revealing that this 2-person headhunting firm has gotten as much as $250 million taxpayer dollars since 2015. This RCMP investigation needs to be expanded to understand what really happened in the building of this app and who is responsible for this huge waste of taxpayer money.
The honourable member from Etobicoke Centre.
Mr. Speaker, February 24th will mark 2 years since the beginning of Russia's further brutal invasion of Ukraine. Our government has said that Canada will stand with the Ukrainian people until they win, that victory is the only option. Victory is the only option because Ukraine's victory is vital to Canada's security. If Russia wins, it will not stop at Ukraine. If Russia wins, Europe, the US, and Canada will be next in defending ourselves against Russian aggression. So every Ukrainian soldier fighting today is one less Canadian who will have to fight in the future. Every dollar we spend today is millions of dollars less that we will have to spend in the future. Our government understands this, and that is one of the reasons that Canada has been a global leader in supporting Ukraine. Unfortunately, Conservatives continue to vote against support for Ukraine, against Canada's national security. On this 2-year anniversary, I urge MPs throughout this House to support and vote in favor of the support needed to ensure Ukraine's victory, because victory is the only option to our security, to our economy, and to our freedom. Slava Ukraini!
Questions orales.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The Prime Minister's Arrive scam scandal is broadening. Today, we learned from Mr. Bellavance that one company alone received $250 million. A company with 4 employees. Their headquarters is in the basement of a cottage. They're an IT company that doesn't do any IT work. Mr. Speaker, what the heck? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Clearly, this happened during the pandemic, and we were doing everything we could to help Canadians get by. But even in an unprecedented situation, the rules have to be followed, and those who didn't follow the rules will have to face the consequences. That's why we warmly welcome the Auditor General's recommendations, and that's why the authorities involved are doing their job. Yes, Canadians should get the truth, and we expect the investigators to do their job. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, to quote from GC Strategy's website, they boast that they are the Ottawa company that has had the fastest growth. And that's a quote. So this Prime Minister, after 8 years, gave contracts to a company with 4 employees that works in IT but doesn't do any IT work, and got millions in contracts. The first contract was entered into 3 weeks after the Prime Minister took office. Why? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Like the Auditor General, Canadians have questions about whether or not the rules were followed and how this kind of company was able to get all those contracts. That's a question we expect the authorities to find the answers to and investigate appropriately, so that we know who and how these processes were followed and what rules were broken. It's very important to make sure that taxpayer money was spent appropriately, and in this situation, we all have serious questions that need answers.
Well, Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister's Arrive scam is now flailing out of control. Today, revelations from a Joël Denis Bellavance that one Arrive scan company received $250 million in contracts. Let's get this straight. It's a company with 4 employees, headquartered in the basement of a tiny cottage. They got IT contracts even though they admit they do no IT work. $250 million? WTF.
Hear, hear. I'm going to ask, we are dangerously close to crossing the line in terms of what is considered parliamentary language. That is an abbreviation which is commonly used with language, which is commonly understood not to be parliamentary. I'm going to ask the honourable opposition leader, please, to withdraw that comment and to use parliamentary language, please.
Where's the funds?
I appreciate that the Leader of the Opposition had clarified that comment. I'm going to ask all members to not use the acronym, because the acronym in the minds of Canadians clearly would be considered unparliamentary language, and to use the full words. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, during the time of pandemic, the government rightly did everything it could to keep Canadians safe and keep them protected. But of course, even in the most trying times, perhaps especially in the most trying times, all the rules need to be followed. In this case, the Auditor General has highlighted some very concerning questions that need to be answered, and that's why we're expecting and supporting all relevant authorities to follow up on these irregular contracting and this perhaps breaking of the rules. This is an important issue, and that's why we're taking it seriously, Mr. Speaker.
Colleagues, in light of the disruption that we had, we are going to take a 2-minute break to allow things to calm down, and then we will come back for the questions and answers.
Wow, this is getting pretty wild. This is the first time I've ever seen the House of Commons get interrupted by protesters screaming. This is wild. Anyone new to the channel, please like and subscribe. It really helps. Share my content because I'm being suppressed. Anyone that wants to help support the channel can do so by getting by buying a super chat or a sticker.
I invite you to take your seats. Est-ce que je peux vous demander de, s'il vous plaît, prendre vos places?
Please take your seats.
On va résumer.
We're going to resume the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
So let's recap. A company that had never before received contracts from the federal government started getting an avalanche of contracts just 3 weeks after this Prime Minister took office. The company, in fact, got $250 million for IT, even though it admits it doesn't do IT. It has 4 employees and has a headquarters in the basement of a cottage. Can the Prime Minister explain why this suspicious company started getting these contracts exactly 21 days after he took office?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
It's obviously an unacceptable situation, which is why the relevant authorities are fully investigating exactly what went on here, particularly highlighted by the Auditor General's recent report. This is an issue we need to continue to understand and make sure that the rules are being followed, make sure that our procurement practices across government are respectful of taxpayer money.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
More proof the Prime Minister is not worth the cost or the corruption. After 8 years of doubling housing costs, quadrupling the carbon tax, sending 2 million people to food banks, he somehow found $250 million for this one company, which boasts on its website that it is now Ottawa's fastest growing company. No doubt about that when they're having their faces stuffed with tax dollars by this Prime Minister. Why is it that when Canadians are starving in food bank lines, the Prime Minister finds $250 million for his friends?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Obviously, the relevant authorities need to follow up on this and get to the bottom of exactly how this unacceptable situation happened. In the meantime, on this side of the House, we're going to continue to focus on making life more affordable for Canadians. For example, attracting thousands of healthcare workers by increasing by 50% student loan forgiveness for rural doctors and nurses, by fast-tracking the construction of more than 51,000 homes, by finalizing the housing accelerator agreements with over 60 small and rural communities. While the Conservative Party continues to block these initiatives, we're going to continue to step up for Canadians.
The
Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. It's important that all Quebecers and Canadians should know that the government has an unfortunate habit of finding scapegoats for the mistakes they've made over the past 8 years. My first question is quite straightforward. Who is responsible? Whose fault is ArriveCan? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, While the pandemic was raging, as a government, we tried to find various ways, every way possible, to protect Canadians' health and safety. But even in times as difficult as that, we have clear rules that have to be followed around contracting and procurement. And we expect the investigators and the responsible authorities to do their job so that we can find out exactly how this unacceptable situation occurred. The Honourable Member for Belleau-Chambly. For clarity, I think we can assume from now on that the person responsible for everything and all the corrective measures that will be needed is the Prime Minister of Canada. What has he put in place in terms of an investigation? For example, are contracts going to be suspended to this company starting back in November? Will they get any more contracts with the government? They were getting contracts before. So what kind of investigation is going to be conducted, and who's going to conduct it, and how long, what's the time frame? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, once we began to see that there were some irregularities or some rules that weren't followed by the public service, internal processes within the public service were triggered. And at the same time, we know that other authorities, including the police, have gotten involved. And we expect all that work to be done to ensure that all the rules were followed, and if not, that there are consequences as appropriate.
So we learned that the ArriveCan scandal goes even deeper. The Liberals gave $250 million to GC Strategies. But let's talk about what that $60 million for ArriveCan could have bought. 125 affordable homes. 800 nurses hired. Instead, this Prime Minister spent this money on an app that doesn't work and no one uses. How does the Prime Minister look Canadians in the eyes with all this waste?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, during the pandemic, Canadians' lives were at risk, and we, quite rightly as a government, reached out to all the possible tools to keep Canadians safe. And indeed, the pandemic was less deadly and less harmful to our economy in Canada than it was in most, if not all, of our peer countries. But at the same time, even as we were innovating and trying to do everything we could to keep Canadians safe, the rules needed to be followed. It is obvious that in this case the rules don't look like they were followed, and that's why there are investigations ongoing that need to get to the bottom of it.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Flagrantly violated, and millions of dollars were wasted.
The Liberals gave $258 million to GC Strategies. That includes spending $60 million on an app that doesn't work. With $60 million, 125 affordable housing units could have been built. How can the Prime Minister look Canadians in the eyes after wasting so much money? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, during the pandemic, as a government, we looked for every way possible to keep Canadians safe and healthy. That was our overarching goal, and we did better than most other countries similar to us. At the same time, we still expected and should require that all rules be followed. Apparently, that wasn't the case, and that is why follow-ups are being done and investigation is being done. We're going to find out who's responsible, and there will be consequences for those who broke the law. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Leader's question. The question was, how can the Prime Minister waste millions of dollars on a ArriveScam when Canadians can't afford to eat, heat, or house themselves? The answer is because the NDP keeps that Prime Minister in power. That's right. And votes consistently in committee to cover up the the scandal and shut down investigations. This app was supposed to cost 80 grand, said the Prime Minister. Now it's at least 60 million, but we don't know for sure because of missing documents. What is the full and final cost of ArriveScam?
Here. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've addressed these questions, but I will highlight that part of the Conservatives' attacks on this situation is because they deeply deplore all the measures we put in to keep Canadians safe during the pandemic. We remember how they gave in to conspiracy theories, spreading anti-vaxxer conspiracies, standing against measures that we needed to put forward to keep Canadians safe. Yes, as we did all those things, we made sure that rules were followed, and any rules that weren't followed, there are consequences and there are investigations ongoing. We will continue to keep Canadian safety at the forefront.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
What was the full and final cost of the app?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, that is among the questions that there are direct follow-ups, investigations ongoing right now, both internal and external, to ensure that as rules were evidently broken, there are consequences, there is an accountability for this. There's no doubt that there are serious challenges around procurement and the public service that were evident at that time. We need to make sure that is fixed. We need to move forward in a way that takes better responsibility for the kinds of challenges that we saw in this situation.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
How much?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, during the pandemic, we were there to invest to protect Canadians and keep their lives safe. Despite the objections and the conspiracy theorism of the Conservative Party, we stepped up in many, many different ways. But even as we did, we expected and we continue to expect that rules around procurement be followed by the public service. It is obvious that that was not the case here. That is why there are ongoing investigations, there will be consequences, and there will be changes made to the public services systems.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister said ArriveCan would cost $80,000. According to the Auditor General, it cost at minimum $60 million, 750 times more. But we still don't know because the records weren't kept properly. But the Prime Minister has access to all documents in his government. So the question is, how much did the app cost? How much? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. As I said, there are investigations underway trying to find out exactly what happened and who benefited and what the consequences should be. This is very important. But remember that at the same time, everything we did was to protect Canadians at that time. And we expected even during that terrible crisis that the rules would be followed. And obviously they appear not to have been followed. So that's why there's an investigation to shed full light on the situation. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Combien?
How much? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. As I said, Mr. Speaker, there are investigations underway to find out who is responsible, what rules were broken, and what the consequences should be for those involved. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The people involved are taxpayers who can't pay their bills anymore, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the government has access to all the documents. Does he think we believe he doesn't know how much that cost? How much ArriveScam cost?
He doesn't know how much his own app costs. He has the power to call for any document he wants from the government. So either he's covering it up, he's incompetent, or worse. Which is it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, There are ongoing investigations, both internal and external, that are following up on exactly how this unacceptable situation happened. We received the Auditor General's report last week. We are following up, and we have been following up on this for months already, Mr. Speaker. We're going to continue to make sure that anyone who broke the rules faces consequences, that systems and structures surrounding the public service and procurement are changed. This is something we are taking very seriously, as we must.
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly.
La pandémie a le dos large.
Well, the pandemic is a pretty good excuse, but it doesn't exempt the government from requirements. We know the Prime Minister is ultimately responsible, and he hasn't conducted a specific investigation into the Arrive scam and the $60 million. Now, has the Prime Minister taken any steps to recover the money that was spent inappropriately and bring it back into the public coffers to try to fix this unacceptable situation? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in answering a previous question, I explained that processes were triggered months ago in connection with these contracts where the rules weren't followed or the processes weren't followed properly. So this has been underway for a number of months. We are making sure that despite the fact that there was a pandemic and we had to act quickly, that does not excuse the fact that contracts were awarded improperly and breaking the rules, and that is why there is an investigation and why there will be consequences. The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. The Prime Minister admits in a roundabout kind of way that there was misuse of public money by CBSA. Did he at least contemplate firing the current administration and putting the CBSA temporarily under some sort of custodianship? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as the investigations unfolded internally, there have already been consequences for some of those involved. I can't talk about that because some of the processes are not yet complete, but I can reassure people that concrete steps have been taken. There have already been consequences, but there will be more as the authorities complete their work. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Common Sense Conservative Party is focused on cutting taxes, building housing, fixing the budget, and stopping crime. Meanwhile, the radical Minister of the Environment and this Prime Minister has launched a war on cars. He said our government has decided to no longer invest in new road infrastructure. How does he think people living in the regions are going to get to work? On their bikes? Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Minister clarified his comments. The fact is that our approach when it comes to highway infrastructure has not changed. Since 2015, we've invested billions in roadways, whether it's bridges, ports, or highways. We will continue to invest in infrastructure all across Canada. Our approach hasn't changed, but the Conservative approach hasn't changed either. They voted against our investments in infrastructure. They voted against our investments in bridges, roadways, and rural communities and major cities. The Conservatives have always voted against. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, he didn't clarify. He added to his comments. The minister, the radical minister, said that the type of project the Liberal government would block would be like the third link for people in the greater Quebec City area. People need that third link. People need their cars when they live in rural areas. But this Prime Minister wants to get in their way. Why is he waging war against cars instead of helping people get to work? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure Quebecers will be happy to hear that the Conservative Party is once again in favour of the third link. The fact is that our government's approach when it comes to investing in transportation, transit, and roads hasn't changed since 2015. The new Samuel Champlain Bridge is one example. And the Gordie Howe Bridge is under construction. We will always invest in infrastructure. And apparently the Conservative Party will always be there to vote against our investments in infrastructure.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, the crazy carbon tax minister has done it again. This time, he's saying that the federal government is not going to support any new road construction. I quote, "Our government has made the decision to stop investing in new road infrastructure." End quote. So he believes that people in Yukon or rural Alberta or rural Newfoundland will have to get to work riding a bicycle. Mr. Speaker, why should those people have to pay taxes for infrastructure when they can't possibly use the tramways and the bicycles that he's funding?
So a couple of months ago, the chair had made it clear to all members that we should be using certain adjectives in regards to particular members of parliament, to individual members of parliament. So like the word crazy is not a word that we should be using in this, and that's one of the things which I had been given direction to members. So I'm going to ask members, please, from now on, to exercise, to work within the boundaries of parliamentary language. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister has already clarified his remarks. Our government's approach to investing in trade corridors and roads that Canadians rely on has not changed since 2015. We will continue to step up, and we got projects like the Samuel de Champlain Bridge in Montreal across the finish line, and we're going to get others like the Gordie Howe Bridge built. We're going to continue to invest in infrastructures. But what also hasn't changed is the Conservative Party's opposition to investments in roads, in communities, in bridges, in ports, right across the country as we grow the economy, because all the Conservative leader is offering is cuts, cuts, cuts.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, first, this radical minister is bringing in a 61-cent a litre carbon tax on people who are committing the crime of driving to work or operating their farms. Then he wants to ban people from using vehicles that are necessary in our climate. And now he says he's going to ban all federal funding for future roads. Our government has made the decision to stop investing in new road infrastructure. Will the Prime Minister condemn these crazy comments?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, the Minister has clarified his remarks. Our approach to infrastructure continues to be one of investing in the future for Canadians. Through the National Trade Corridors Fund alone, we're building projects like a new bridge over the Yukon River in Dawson City, new interchanges on Highway 101 and 103 in Nova Scotia, and twinning the Trans-Canada Highway in parts of Newfoundland. We're also working with municipalities through the Community Building Fund. Just in Ontario, this means almost 2,900 projects for local roads and bridges. What has not changed as well is the Conservative Party's opposition to investing in future, investing in...
The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
Netanyahu's bombing of Rafah and potential ground incursion will be a slaughter. Thousands of innocent Palestinians will die. The Liberals act as if they're concerned, but they authorize $28.5 million in new military exports to Netanyahu. The Prime Minister has the power and the responsibility to protect civilians. When will the Prime Minister stop selling arms to Netanyahu?
They're here.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, a military operation in Rafah would have catastrophic consequences. Over half of Gaza's population is taking refuge in the area, including many Canadians and their families. There is simply nowhere else for civilians to go. Protecting civilians is paramount. A sustainable ceasefire is urgently needed. Hamas must lay down its arms and release all hostages immediately. The only possible path forward towards peace is a two-state solution. We've told this directly to Prime Minister Netanyahu and other regional partners, and we have not emitted any new export permits since October 7th.
The honourable member from Burnaby South.
Prime Minister has an obligation to back up his words with actions. With kids going online, we know they risk being exposed to harmful content, sexual extortion, and harassment. In the last election, the Prime Minister promised legislation to hold those platforms accountable and protect kids within 100 days of being in office. It's been 814 days, and still nothing's happened. Children are being hurt as the Prime Minister sits by. When will the Prime Minister stop protecting web giants and start protecting kids?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader Opposite knows well that we have been working very, very closely with communities, with individuals, with experts to move forward on online harms legislation that is going to do the right job of protecting our kids from all range of harms that they face online. This is something that we have taken very, very seriously, but it's also something that we've listened on and we've heard, particularly from minority or marginalized communities, that we need to get it exactly right, and that's why we have taken the time. This is something that the Leader knows full well, but we're going to continue to do the right work to protect our kids.
The honourable member from Vancouver Centre.
Mr. Speaker, sexual and reproductive health touches all aspects of human health and well-being. It affects physical and mental health. It impacts social participation. It ensures healthy reproductive organs, family planning, pre- and postnatal care, delivery of healthy babies, and safe abortion. There's a push globally to limit access to the full range of sexual and reproductive health care. This week, 2 female MPs were stopped from raising this issue in Parliament. Since it is SRHR week globally, can the Prime Minister reaffirm the government's position on this human rights issue?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Vancouver Centre for her tireless advocacy on women's issues. This week, I'm proud to reaffirm our government's unwavering commitment to defending Canadians' reproductive rights through historic investments and work with grassroots organizers. But we've seen just this week, over the past 2 days, that the threat to reproductive freedom is alive and well in Canada, even in this chamber. The shameful behaviour of Conservative MPs in shutting down women in this House leaves Canadians wondering what that party is so afraid of. I call on Conservative MPs to stand up for women's rights.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Common Sense plan acts as the tax, builds the homes, fixes the budgets, stops the crime. Prime Minister can't defend his policy, so he's changing the name. People hate the carbon tax because 60% pay more into it than they get back in his phony rebates. So today he announced a costly rebranding of the hated carbon tax. My question for him is, how much did he spend on consultants in order to come up with the new name, and was it GC Strategies that he hired?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition doesn't even understand the consequences of the cuts he's proposing left, right, and centre. He proposes to take away the carbon price rebate, the Canada carbon rebate from millions of Canadian families across the country. The Canada carbon rebate is going to be there to continue to deliver more money to 8 out of 10 Canadian families in 4 checks over the course of the year that puts cash in their pockets while we fight climate change. We're seeing reduction in emissions that Canada is leading on. We're also moving forward on growing the economy and supporting Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He couldn't even get the new name of the carbon tax right. It's only 3 words. The Prime Minister should learn that we can't improve life by slogans alone, Mr. Speaker. That's right. So that's why we propose the facts. I have here a distributional analysis of the federal fuel charge by the Parliamentary Budget Officer, which shows that 60% of Canadians pay more in taxes than they get back in his phony rebates. Why won't he follow the facts and axe the tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The the opposition wants to talk about facts, the Canada Carbon Rebate will deliver $1,800 in Alberta to an average family of 4, $1,200 in Manitoba, $1,120 in Ontario for your family of 4, $1,500 in Saskatchewan, $760 in New Brunswick, $824 in Nova Scotia, $880 in PEI, and $1,192 in Newfoundland and Labrador to a family of 4. 8 out of 10 families across the country get more money out of the Canada Carbon Rebate.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost of housing. It has doubled in price since the Prime Minister was elected. Today, on rent.ca, we found out that rent has hit a new record in January. Monthly rent hit the record of $2,196 per month. That is an increase of 10% as compared with last year. When will he understand that he needs to fund housing rather than funding bureaucracy, because that's not going to fix the housing crisis? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition demonstrates time and time again that he does not even understand the programs that he intends to cut. We have a Housing Accelerator Fund, and through that fund, we're investing in municipalities' capacity to build more homes faster. We are also increasing densification and making changes to zoning. We are accelerating permits, building permits. We are creating more opportunities for more units to be built. But the Leader of the Opposition refuses to understand that that is how we are going to solve the housing crisis. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Well, let's talk about this program then. Since it was created 2 years ago, rent has increased across the country. Yesterday, in committee, we asked the Housing Minister how many units have been built through the Accelerator Fund. The answer? 0. The Minister said the program is not building specific homes. Those are the Minister's words. So, Mr. Speaker, if it costs $4 billion to not build a single home, how much would it cost to build just one home? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition has just shown us that he does not even understand the programs that he wants to cut. Yes, we invested $4 billion in municipalities throughout Canada in order to increase densification and accelerate home building. We're investing to cut red tape. We're investing to build more homes faster, and that's exactly what we're doing. We are currently creating opportunities. 500,000 homes will be created over the next year, but this opposition leader wants to cut because all he knows how to do is cut and slash. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. The Canada Nuclear Safety Commission. The Commission, in fact, approved a nuclear waste mound where nuclear waste will be stored. And it's basically right beside the Ottawa River. Many people are very worried, including leaders of Anishinaabe groups who are here today. Does the Prime Minister feel that nuclear waste is dangerous? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, protecting the health and safety of Canadians and of the environment is a total priority for this government. The decision to authorize the facility was made by the Canada Nuclear Safety Commission, which is an independent organization that only approves projects after assessing them and ensuring that they're safe for Canadians and their health. And, of course, they only grant approvals after consulting relevant groups and Indigenous groups as well. The Minister of Natural Resources does not have any say in the CNSC's decisions. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Yes, but the Anishinaabe Nation has concluded with full certainty that it is not safe. The nation of Quebec has also concluded with absolute certainty that this is an unsafe project. So is the Prime Minister only listening to nuclear lobbyists, or is he only listening to the increasingly small Liberal lobbies? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as we know very well, as we all know, the Canada Nuclear Safety Commission is a scientific and independent organization. They conduct thorough investigations to ensure that nuclear facilities are safe. They communicate with and consult involved communities, and they ensure the safety of Canadians and of the environment. This is not a political decision, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we trust our experts. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost of housing, which has doubled as he builds bureaucracies that block homes. In January, according to data out today, rent was up 10% year over year to $2,196. An astonishing increase in a very short time. In fact, it's up about 20% in the last 2 years alone, and it's accelerating ever since he named his incompetent housing minister. Will the Prime Minister follow our common sense plan to cut the bureaucracy and build the homes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that cuts from the Conservative leader wouldn't get more homes built. If he was really concerned about rents, he would line behind us and support the removal of the GST on new apartment constructions. That's something they actually voted against, Mr. Speaker. We know that unlocking greater supply of housing, including with purpose-built apartment buildings across the country, is a way of bringing down rents for people. That's a concrete solution that we've put forward that the Conservative chose to vote against for political gain and for political reasons. We're going to continue to be there to do the hard work of delivering for Canadians while he relies on catchy slogans and misunderstanding what it is that he's choosing to cut.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
We were the ones that proposed taking the tax off home building, Mr. Speaker. The one good idea that he finally copied. But he talks about slogans. One is the Housing Accelerator Fund, the $4 billion program that was supposed to speed up housing. We asked the housing minister yesterday in committee how many homes it had completed. The answer is zero. Nada, nothing. His quote, "It doesn't actually lead to the construction of specific homes." Mr. Speaker, if it cost $4 billion to build 0 homes, how much would it cost to build 1?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, we have the clear proof that the Leader of the Opposition doesn't even understand the proposals that he's counting on cutting, that he's promising to cut from Canadians. The Housing Accelerator Fund is about investing in municipalities across the country to change the frame around which they build homes faster. It involves rapidly eliminating red tape. It involves increasing densification, changing zoning, making sure we can unlock far more houses construction than any federal government could build on its own. This is the approach that we're taking, and it's working, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
$4 billion, 35 photo ops, 1 minister, 0 homes. He not only says the program doesn't build homes, he says it doesn't lead to the construction of homes. He couldn't point to one development that had actually been completed. They've been in power for 8 years, and they can't get anything built. When will they get the bureaucracy out of and the taxes out of the way so that we can build the homes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the only tool that the Leader of the Conservative Party has put forward is cutting programs in order to somehow create more homes. What we're actually doing is investing in partnership with municipalities to eliminate red tape, to accelerate the construction of homes, to increase densification, to change zoning so that more houses can be built. He wants to talk about a number. 500,000 new homes are being facilitated by the Housing Accelerator Fund right across the country. We've signed these over the past months. Construction is already underway across the country.
The Honourable Member for Pontiac. Mr. Speaker, communities across Canada are gathering to observe women, girls, and two-spirited people who have gone missing or have been murdered. Mr. Speaker, women in my riding, Indigenous women, are still afraid to leave their communities at night. This year marks the 5th anniversary of the final report of the National Inquiry. Can the Prime Minister provide an update on efforts to implement the calls to action outlined in the report? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I thank the member for Pontiac for her question and for her hard work. The crisis of Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirited people who have gone missing or been murdered is ongoing in our country. Since 2015, there has been a national inquiry. We launched that in 2015. The Conservatives refused to launch it, though. Now we have a clear action plan. Thanks to that action plan, there is increased help for those fleeing violence. We also created a red alert to help us find disappeared Indigenous people. I'd like to thank all those who are participating in memorial walks in their communities.
The Prime Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder he's unleashed in our streets. He has signed on with the NDP government in BC to decriminalize crack, heroin, and other hard drugs, and allowed for drug injection sites in Richmond. Courageous and patriotic Canadians of Chinese origin rose up to speak out and protect their kids, and were treated to racial slurs by NDP radical activists telling them to go back where they came from. Will the Prime Minister reject this liberal racism and ban hard drugs so we can stop the crime?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the impact of the toxic drug and overdose crisis on our communities is absolutely devastating. We're using every tool at our disposal to work with partners to end this national public health crisis. Unlike the opposition, we're following an evidence-based approach while working in partnership with stakeholders, experts, and people with lived and living experience. We take the safety of all Canadians seriously. That's why from the beginning we've approached this from both a public health and public safety perspective, hand in hand with the BC government in this case.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He wouldn't condemn the racial slurs, but he did issue a vicious condemnation of his own record. Let me quote what he said about life in Canada after 8 years of his prime ministership, and I quote, "Yeah, grocery bills suck. Rent sucks. Mortgage renegotiations. Oh my God, how are we going to deal with it?" Mr. Speaker, this is life after 8 years. What is his slogan going to be in the next election? Vote for me and life will still suck?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, did he just say, vote for me and life will suck? I think that's what he just said. The reality is we have put forward smart, responsible solutions to fight climate change and grow the economy, to lift over 500,000 kids out of poverty, to invest in the kind of economy of the future, the good careers, whether it's in zero-emission vehicles, whether it's in mining or forestry, whether it's in advanced manufacturing. We're continue to bring more women into the workforce with initiatives like childcare. We're moving forward on dental care, which the Conservatives voted against for seniors and young people. We're going to be there to invest in a better future for Canadians every single day.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Actually spoke the truth, maybe by accident, by saying that after 8 years, life sucks for the very middle class and those working hard to join it, to whom he promised so much. He taxed their grocery bills with a quadrupling carbon tax. He doubled housing costs after promising to lower them. He's unleashed a crime wave across the country. Now that he admits that life sucks under his leadership, why won't he accept our common sense plan to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians understand that these are complicated times and that governments need to step up with real solutions. Responsible leadership is about recognizing the challenges people are facing and putting forward solutions to fix them, whether it's a housing accelerator that's getting 500,000 homes built over the coming years, whether it's childcare that is saving thousands of dollars for families right across the country as we help more women get into the workforce, whether it's fighting climate change in a way that puts more money into people's pockets and builds stronger careers for the future. These are the solutions we're putting forward. He's doing nothing but attack.
The honourable member from Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians want access to healthcare system and services that allow them and their family and loved ones to get the care they need when they need it. While the Conservative voted against payments to our Canada Health Transfer, our government signed a bilateral funding agreement with Ontario, investing more than $3.1 billion over the next 3 years. Can the Prime Minister please update the House on the Working Together Agreement and how they will help the healthcare system and the impact on the lives of the Canadians?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for his question and his service to his constituents. These specifically tailored agreements will address unique healthcare challenges faced by provinces and territories. Thanks to this federal funding, Ontario will add hundreds of new family physicians and nurse practitioners, expand healthcare education programs, remove barriers to foreign credential recognition, and open 5 new youth wellness hubs to improve access to mental health services. Unlike the Conservative Party is too busy fighting for a privatized healthcare system, we will keep making bold investments and work with the provinces and territories to deliver real.
The honourable member from Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are worried about the climate crisis, and we know that coal is the dirtiest source of electricity, producing more emissions than any other fossil fuel. The Liberals promised to ban thermal coal exports, but under the Liberals, exports have more than tripled. More broken promises. They have no plan to phase it out, no plan to support workers. As Canadians across the country are facing extreme weather, will the Prime Minister end thermal coal exports?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, yes. Phasing out coal from the electricity sector is the single most important climate action any country can take. We're committed to ending thermal coal exports by 2030, along with an end to coal-powered electricity generation. The Minister of the Environment is actively working on achieving these targets, and we'll have an update in due course.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabasca. Mr. Speaker, after question period, all MPs will have the opportunity to vote on Bill C-273 to repeal Section 43 of the Criminal Code, which allows an adult to use corporal punishment on a child for supposedly educational purposes. Over 65 countries around the world have taken this step, and 27 are in the process of doing so. The UN Committee for the Protection of Children has asked for this. The Call to Action number 6 of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls for this, and so does the Canadian Medical Association. Can the Prime Minister confirm that his government will support this initiative in order to protect our children? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague for his question. This matter is important to all of us, and I would like to reassure everyone that our government is committed to protecting children and their physical safety. All children everywhere in Canada. Thus, we will support C-273 and its goal to protect children from violence and abuse. We look forward to hearing experts speak about this matter in committee. This legislation is very important, and in a few moments, we will support it.